In the heart of the dense ancient forests of West Africa, there stood a grand palace, home to the feared and revered Queen Nkiru. Known as the Blood Queen, Nkiru was a powerful ruler who believed that bathing in the blood of young maidens would grant her eternal youth and beauty. Her kingdom, once a place of prosperity and joy, had become shrouded in fear and darkness. One stormy night, a young woman named Amina was brought to the palace. Unlike the others, Amina possessed a rare inner strength and a spark of defiance in her eyes. Queen Nikiru, intrigued by this unusual spirit, decided to keep Amina alive for a while longer, hoping to break her will and savor the moment of her ultimate surrender. Days turned into weeks, and Amina's resilience only grew stronger. She began to form a bond with a few of the palace's servants, who were secretly horrified by their mistress's actions. Together, they hatched a daring plan to escape the palace and expose Queen Nikiru's atrocities to the world. One moonless night, as the queen prepared for another gruesome ritual, Amina and her newfound allies made their move. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the palace, avoiding the guards and traps set by Nikiru. The tension was palpable, each step fraught with danger. Amina and her companions sprinted through the dense forest, their hearts pounding in unison. The Blood Queen's enraged screams echoed behind them, growing louder with each passing moment. They knew that if they were caught, their fate would be sealed. As they reached the edge of the forest, one of the servants, a young man named Kofi, fumbled with a hidden path he had discovered during his time in the palace. His hands trembled, but Amina placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We can do this," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. With a final desperate push, they found the narrow path and dashed into the thick underbrush, the cool night air biting at their skin. The forest loomed ahead, a dark and tangled refuge. They plunged into its depths, hoping the dense foliage would conceal their escape. Queen Nikiru, however, was not far behind. Her fury drove her forward, her eyes wild with a mix of rage and desperation. She could not let them escape, not when they held the power to destroy everything she had built. She called out to her warriors, ordering them to fan out and search the forest. Amina and her group pressed on, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The forest seemed endless, each shadow a potential threat. They stumbled over roots and ducked under low hanging branches, their progress slow but determined. Amina and her companions pressed on, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The forest seemed endless, each shadow a potential threat. They stumbled over roots and ducked under low hanging branches, their progress slow but determined. Suddenly they heard the sound of footsteps closing in. Panic surged through them, but Amina refused to give in to despair. "This way," she urged, leading them toward a narrow, hidden cave she had discovered during her time in the palace. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. The cave wound deeper into the earth, the air growing cooler and the darkness more complete. They could hear the warriors' shouts growing fainter, but they knew they were not safe yet. They needed to find a place to hide, to regroup, and plan their next move. As dawn began to break, casting a pale light through the cave's entrance, they stumbled upon an old abandoned shrine. It was small and dilapidated, but it offered shelter. They slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind them. Exhausted, they sank to the floor, their breaths finally beginning to steady. Amina looked around at her companions, their faces etched with fear and determination. "We can't stay here long," she said softly. "But for now, We rest, and then we find a way to end this nightmare once and for all. The group nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening. They knew the road ahead would be perilous, but they had each other, and together they would fight to bring Queen Nikiru's reign of terror to an end. When they reached the palace, Amina led them to a hidden entrance she had discovered during her captivity. It was a narrow, winding passage that led directly to the heart of the palace. They moved silently, their breaths shallow, every creak and whisper magnified in the stillness. Finally, they reached the hidden chamber. Amina's hands trembled as she pushed open the heavy door. Inside, the room was filled with shelves of scrolls and tablets, each one a testament to Nikiru's horrific acts. They quickly gathered as many documents as they could carry, their urgency driving them forward. Just as they were about to leave, the door slammed shut behind them. Queen Nikiru stood there, her eyes blazing with fury. Did you really think you could escape me? She hissed, her voice dripping with venom. The group stood frozen, their escape route blocked. But Amina stepped forward, her chin held high. Your reign of terror ends tonight, Nikiru. The world will know the truth. Nikiru laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. And who will believe you? You are nothing but peasants, and I am a queen. But before she could act, the sound of approaching footsteps filled the corridor. The palace guards, alerted by the commotion, burst into the room. For a moment, there was chaos as the guards took in the scene before them. Amina seized the opportunity. Look at these documents, she cried, holding up the evidence. See the truth of what she has done. The guards hesitated, their loyalty wavering as they saw the undeniable proof of Nikiru's atrocities. The queen's grip on power was slipping, and she knew it. In a final, desperate act, Nikiru lunged at Amina, but Kofi and the others intervened, holding her back. The guards, now fully aware of the queen's crimes, moved to restrain her. As dawn broke over the palace, the nightmare was finally coming to an end. Queen Nikiru, the Blood Queen, was taken into custody, her reign of terror shattered by the bravery of a few determined souls. Amina and her companions stood together, their ordeal over, but their bond stronger than ever. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their courage lighting the way for a new dawn. With Queen Nikiru imprisoned and justice served, Amina and her companions returned to their village where they were greeted as heroes. The villagers, once gripped by fear, now looked to the future with hope and determination. The dark shadow that had loomed over their lives was finally lifted. Amina, however, knew that their work was not yet done. The scars left by Nikiru's reign of terror ran deep, and it would take time for the community to heal. She dedicated herself to helping rebuild the village, using her newfound influence to ensure that the voices of the oppressed were heard. One day, as Amina was tending to the fields, a messenger arrived with a letter from the king. It was an invitation to the royal court, where the king wished to honor her and her companions for their bravery. Amina hesitated, unsure if she was ready to leave the village so soon after their ordeal. But her friends encouraged her to go, reminding her that their story could inspire others to stand up against tyranny. With a heavy heart, Amina agreed. She and her companions set out for the capital once more, this time as honored guests. The journey was filled with a sense of anticipation and reflection. They had come so far, and now they had the opportunity to make a lasting impact. Upon their arrival at the royal court, they were greeted with great fanfare. The king himself welcomed them, praising their courage and resilience. A grand ceremony was held in their honor, and they were awarded medals and titles, their names forever etched in the annals of history. But amidst the celebrations, Amina's thoughts remained with her village. She knew that true change required more than just recognition, it required action. She used her newfound influence to advocate for reforms that would protect the vulnerable and ensure that no one else would suffer as they had. As the years passed, Amina's efforts bore fruit. The region flourished, and the memory of Queen Nikiru's reign faded into legend. Amina and her companions became symbols of hope and resilience, their story inspiring generations to come. And though the Blood Queen's palace stood as a grim reminder of the past, it was now a place of learning and reflection where people came to remember the darkness and celebrate the light that had emerged from it. Amina, now an elder, looked out over the village she had helped rebuild. She saw the children playing in the fields, the families working together, and she knew that their struggle had not been in vain. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, their courage lighting the way for a brighter future. One day, a messenger arrived with news from the capital. The king had decreed that a monument be erected in honor of Amina and her companions to commemorate their bravery and the enduring spirit of the people. The monument would stand in the village square, a symbol of hope and resilience for all to see. The unveiling ceremony was a grand affair, attended by villagers and dignitaries alike. As the cloth was pulled away, revealing a statue of Amina and her companions, the crowd erupted in applause. Amina, now in her twilight years, stood before the monument, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She addressed the crowd, her voice strong despite her age. "This monument is not just for us," she said. "It is for all who have suffered and all who have fought for a better world. Let it remind us that even in the darkest times, there is always hope. And let it inspire us to continue the fight for justice and compassion." The crowd cheered, their spirits lifted by her words. Amina knew that her time was drawing to a close, but she took comfort in knowing that the legacy of their struggle would endure. She had planted the seeds of change, and they had blossomed into a brighter future. As the sun set over the village, casting a warm glow on the monument, Amina felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and now she could rest, knowing that the light would continue to shine. Surrounded by her friends and the new generation of leaders she had mentored, Amina closed her eyes, content in the knowledge that her life's work had made a lasting impact. Her story, once a tale of fear and oppression, had become a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who heard it. And so, the legend of Amina, the brave woman who stood against the Blood Queen, lived on, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is always hope, and that the light of courage and compassion can overcome any darkness. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and comment.